Hello, I'm Chris Osmond, and this is Solutions. Enough complaining, let's fix America. Today I'm going to talk about America and its decline, or its a seeming decline, and what's going on with the protests seem to fall in line with what's going on in this country, and why I believe America is kind of in trouble. Well, everybody believes America is in trouble. All the nations look at America as what was once a shining example is now something that nobody really wants to emulate anymore. The rest of the world looks at America like we're a bunch of fools. And there's a reason why. And I think we're in one of the stages of empire. Empires usually last around 250 years. And America was named the United States of America in 1776. So we're just 6 years shy of that 250-year number. And there's going to be some tolerance as far as the empire lasting longer or its demise coming sooner, but on average 250 years has been the lifespan of most empires, and right now America is getting close to that. The stages of empire are as follows: the age of outburst or pioneers, that's stage one. Stage two, the age of conquest. America has been doing that for quite a while, going around the world and basically terrorizing other nations and bending those other nations to their will. Number three is the age of commerce. Number four, the age of affluence. Number five, the age of intellect. Number six, the age of decadence. And number seven, the age of decline and collapse. I think we're getting close to the age of decline and collapse, and it's bound to happen. It seems to be a natural cycle of most nations, because you have the people who start the nation as being like the pioneers and the innovators and the heroes and things like that, and eventually you get to the point where you end up with Donald Trump as your president. You get these inept, corrupt, immoral leaders who should not be where they are, but because of complacency on the part of the citizens, you end up with these type of people. In America, that's happened because we've gone through the stages of affluence, where we've had wealthy people and everybody's idolized the rich, and everybody's looked to the rich as the people who would save us. And then now we've gone through the age of the intellect, where it was a meritocracy, where everybody had to go to college, and college was the end all be all, which it was for some people. It did benefit a lot of people. It helped people move out from lower classes to the middle class and even higher. But eventually those college has become something that is unaffordable to so many Americans. I spoke in a previous video where the military talked about how college debt was beneficial to their recruiting practices, because so many college people weren't able to find good paying jobs to pay back their college debt. And college debt in America has been one of those things that they've made impossible to get out of. You can't declare bankruptcy on student loan debt, so you're stuck with it at all times. And one of the ways to get out of it is by joining the military. So recruitment is gone up because of that. So I think we're in the stage of decadence, and I think another name for it is the stage called the bread and circuses. And bread and circuses basically just means that the state is has to take care of everybody, or has to take care of more and more of its citizens, because there are fewer and fewer opportunities out there for its citizens to advance themselves. So that's the bread part, where basically in Rome they fed the masses, and that created a big burden on the state, because the state is no longer producing, it's no longer productive. It is now having to support the masses of people, because they've run out of ideas, and they have not created a sustainable economy for the majority of their citizens. Right now, we have a political system that we have two parties, and everybody looks at that you're either on the red team or the blue team. But these two parties have been going back and forth for decades now. And at certain points, one or the other party was in control of our entire government to a certain extent. This is like Obama. When he came into office, he had all branches of the government in his favor. And he got us health care that was basically written by a right-wing organization, Heritage Foundation or something like that. They wrote that. It was the same plan that Mitt Romney instituted in his state of Massachusetts years ago. The people who wrote Mitt Romney's health care bill were the same people who wrote Obamacare. So we have these political factions which call them, they say they're two different things, but they actually represent one entity with minor nuanced differences between them. It's like the Democrats. They're more socially aware and more socially conscious about the population. But economically, they vote along with the Republicans. Military-industrial complex has gotten bigger with the Democratic approval. Donald Trump, they say they resist him, but they vote in favor of almost everything that he does, that all the big changes that Donald Trump has made and instituted, they vote in favor of that. One thing being the military budget. Donald Trump asked for a certain amount of money, and the Democrats gave him about $30 billion more than he even asked for in his military budget. So the two parties don't really represent anybody except for a minority of people, and that's the rich and the super rich. If you don't believe me, look at your life. How has your life gotten better? If you don't believe me, look at the pandemic. They were inept and they were incapable, or they were immoral and unable to get the money to the people. But they were surely able to get the money to corporations and the wealthy. So, like I said, we have a political system that says they favor the people. The Democrats say they favor the people, and the Republicans are the party of business. But ultimately, they're all the party of business. That's why Wall Street is doing so well. That's why, as the world, as America seems to collapse, Wall Street seems to grow and grow and grow. Now, some of the other instances of or examples of decline in America, bread and circuses, are the circus. Let's go to the circuses part. Circuses part are those things that keep people distracted from, their lives and how poorly their lives are going or how bad things are trending. So in America and across the world, we have, increase in immorality. We have, look at Jeffrey Epstein. That guy, he supposedly killed himself. But he knew all these wealthy and rich people, and none of them seemed to know that this guy was doing this illicit stuff with these young girls. How is that possible? The most powerful person in the world, President Clinton at the time, one of the richest, rich person, Donald Trump, they all, I'm sure they have resources and they vet who they hang out with. That if they didn't, then they're definitely stupid. That's like, say, an athlete or some celebrity just willy-nilly going out and just being with whoever, hanging out with whoever, and not kind of getting some idea of who these people are before they just hang out with them. And on top of that, as president, you have the Secret Service, you have the FBI, you have all these other things at your disposal. But for some reason, Clinton didn't know that this guy was a pedophile. He never saw anything. He must have been an idiot, or he must have been blind or deaf, or suffered some kind of temporary inability for his senses to work while he was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. And then, the Secret Service, they have to vet these people. They have to go out to make sure that the president is going to be safe. And I imagine that part of the president's safety is his reputation. You want to keep his reputation safe as well. So how did the Secret Service, how did all these other agencies that know everything about everybody miss the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was having sex with minors and inviting them, to his island and doing all this crazy stuff? And once he died, all of a sudden, all that went away. I mean, there are people who are reporting. There's a thing on Netflix called Filthy Rich. It's about Jeffrey Epstein. And it provides more details as to the timeline of what happened with Jeffrey Epstein. But people in America in general, they seem to forget like some of the evil things that some of these people have done. We look at George W. Bush. There's videos of him joking about no weapons of mass destruction. There's a book written by Richard Clarke, who was in his administration, which details that the Bush administration wanted to go after Iraq before 9/11, and he also suggests that Bush was suggesting that he find something in Iraq after he told them that there were no links between Iraq and 9/11. I mean, the videos are, I posted those videos, I posted links to those videos of Bush joking about no weapons of mass destruction here, no weapons of mass destruction there, and people laughing. And it's like, really, is that something to laugh at, that America has gone out and bombed and killed hundreds of thousands to millions of people around the world? And then you can joke about it. And while we're on that sidebar, when has any country actually benefited from American intervention? You'd be hard pressed to find a lot of countries that actually benefited from it, whether it was humanitarian reasons, or the benefit of Americans that we went to war for. Those countries rarely recovered. There was a lot of money that was poured into them. A lot of American contractors made a lot of money to rebuild the countries that were never rebuilt. I mean, all over the world, American intervention has not helped these countries regain any strength or sovereignty. So those are some of the things. As far as their morality, like I said, we touched on that with Jeffrey Epstein, but also like the increase in porn, the increase in divorce, things like that. And then one of the funny ones, as far as bread and circuses, is that at so many of these end of these empires, you had these celebrity chefs, which is a funny one, but they did oftentimes herald the end of an empire. And I think along with that, things like celebrities like the Kardashians and other celebrities that basically don't really have a talent. They don't really do anything. It's just that they're extremely wealthy, and people admire wealth. Well, what happens when you admire wealth is the wealthy can do whatever they want. It's like magic. The shiny object over here is some wealthy person. Meanwhile, their wealth is being increased because of what's going on behind the scenes, what our government is doing, what lobbyists are doing to in our halls of government, where they convince our leaders to actually benefit the rich more than anybody else. And as I've said in other videos, there's a reason why our leaders tell us that the government works slowly. Meanwhile, it seems to work pretty fast for the rich. They seem to get tax breaks. They seem to get a lot of things passed. Meanwhile, we get a lot more laws that make a lot more things illegal. In Florida, for instance, we have a thing called teen sexting, whereas if you're an underage person and you're dating an underage person and you send them a dirty text or a dirty picture of yourself, if you get caught 3 times doing that, you could face 5 years of prison. You could be convicted for a felony and face 5 years of prison. Now, that seems crazy to me, but you be the judge. America is on the decline, and we need to be paying attention to what's going on. As I've said, all empires do have a shelf life, and America's shelf life seems to be ending. But one way that you can kind of mitigate this is through by not adhering to the fiat currency, that is the American dollar. As the Federal Reserve continues to print trillions and trillions of dollars and give it to other people other than you, that devalues every dollar that's in your pocket. There's no other way that it can. If you keep adding money to the supply of into your economy, then you basically devalue every other dollar. Now, if you have billions of those dollars, then that doesn't hurt you because, all right, it does thin out the money for everybody. But if you have billions of dollars, you can still buy everything you need to buy. Whereas if you're just a regular person who doesn't have billions or millions of dollars, you end up having to spend a greater percentage of your money on those things you need to survive. So, one way to mitigate this is to get away from fiat currencies because they're all over the world and they all collapse eventually. And one way to get away from fiat currencies is either buy gold or to buy Bitcoin. Disclaimer, I have some of both. But the problem with gold is that it's not very portable. and it's hard to move. It's a precious metal, and it's going to be hard to get rid of. But what you can do is, if you have some Bitcoin, you can exchange it instantaneously for fiat money. And as the value of Bitcoin goes up versus the value of the dollar, you're actually keeping on pace with the inflation and the devaluation of the dollar. So I've tried to tell people to buy Bitcoin. I've tried to tell people to buy Bitcoin in the past. It's only getting harder and harder and further away from most people's ability to buy Bitcoin and afford it. Right now, you don't even have to buy a full Bitcoin to make your future more secure. You could buy what's called Satoshis. You could buy hundreds, you can buy thousands, you can buy $10 worth of Satoshis, which are basically like pennies are to the dollar. So you have Bitcoin, then you have Satoshis, and the comparison is like I said. And for the communities of color, there's, especially black people, there's a book by a man named Isiah Jackson, and he talks about Bitcoin in the black community. I forget the exact title of the book, but I will provide a link below. Also, he did an interview with Max Keiser, so I'll provide that link below. And then from there, you can look up his book and buy his book and see and understand his rationale for why the black community should be buying, everybody, not just black community, but his book was written targeted to target the black community specifically. Again, like I said, be careful and be aware. Do your own research, not just about Bitcoin or about gold or any of these other things, but look into what your leaders are saying, and then look at the real world and see if the leaders' words actually reflect what's going on in your world. Because if it doesn't benefit you, then you need to make some changes. And if that's at the local level, then so be it, because you can affect more change at a local level than you can at the federal level. But if all smaller communities start to become more self-sufficient and more sovereign, then that takes away more power from the government. Instead of people saying, "Oh, go vote, go vote." Take care of your local community. And then as your local communities around the country become self-sufficient and sustainable, that detracts the power from the federal government. If you could grow your own food right now, you would not be relying on corporately owned corporately owned food supply chain. You would be growing your own food. You would be eating your own food. Your community would be better off if everybody in your community was doing the same thing. So look at solutions like that. Try to be more self-reliant and get away from the need to rely on a government that has shown that they do not have your best interests at heart. And as a matter of fact, they have, in some cases, your worst interests at heart, because this federal government is telling you to go back to work, and they have not come up with a cure for COVID-19. They have not come up with a vaccine for COVID-19. They haven't made any progress for COVID-19. And yet they're telling everybody that we have to go back to work. And you have some of these people on TV or pundits on these shows that talk about, oh yeah, we might have to sacrifice some of the old. That's okay. And it's like, okay, well, is it your old people that we're going to sacrifice? Are you willing to sacrifice your own life for the economy? And of course, they don't have to, because they have money and they can stay home and shelter in place. Meanwhile, everybody else has to go back to work and risk their loved ones. So anyway, listen to what they're saying, be skeptical of what they're saying, and look at what's going on in your reality to determine whether or not they reflect your best interests. Again, join me sometime soon for the next Solutions. Enough complaining. Let's fix America.